Good morning, everybody. Oh, nice. Thank you. Whoa. Let's go ahead and stand and we'll sing together.
You want me to fix it?
He became sin, who knew no sin, that we might become His righteousness. He humbled Himself and carried the cross. Love so amazing, love so amazing.
That sounds awesome. Sing it out.
Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all.
Sing it out.
His body the bread, His blood the wine, broken and poured out all for love. The whole earth trembled and the veil was torn. Love so amazing, love so amazing, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all.
Sing it out. All our hope.
All our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All the glory to you, God, the light of the world, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. You are good when there's nothing good in me. You are love on display for all to see. You are light when the darkness closes in. You are hope, you have covered all my sin.
are peace, you are peace. When my fear is crippling, you are true, you are true. Even in my wandering, you are joy, you are joy. You're the reason that I sing. You are life, in you death has lost its sting.
Sing this out.
Oh, I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign.
Sing it out. You are more.
You are more, you are more than my words will ever say. You are Lord, you are Lord. All creation will proclaim. You are here, you are here. In your presence I'm made whole. You are God, you are God. Of all else I'm letting go. Oh, I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign.
And my heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus.
My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. So I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign.
Sing it out. My heart will sing.
My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus.
And all God's people said, amen. Let's have a word of prayer. God, we thank you so much for the privilege, the opportunity that you give us to lift our voices in praise to you, to your great name. For the opportunity you give us to lift your name up. I know that next Thursday we are celebrating Thanksgiving. But God, may it be our mindset not to wait till then, not to wait till a set day to remember to be thankful, but to make that a daily habit. To recognize that you have given us everything we have. Every good and perfect thing comes from you. God, I pray that through the rest of this chapel today, as we finish out, as we go our separate ways, as we spend time with our families, spend time in any ministry opportunities that you give us, that you would just give us all safe travels. Just help us to be a blessing to those that you bring into our path. Help us to be the people that you've called us to be and to serve in the ways that you want us to serve, to show you to a world that desperately needs you. We'll be careful to give you all the praise, honor, and glory, for you are the only one that is worthy of it and deserving of it. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. You may be seated.
It is a delight to introduce the Dean of our School of Leadership, Dr. David Pitcher. It's still hard for me to believe that we had our first conversation with Tennessee Temple still less than a year ago. I drove over there on the Monday of Thanksgiving week, and we had our first conversation. Not long after that, the Pitchers came up here. We had a visit, and I sensed a kindred spirit from the moment that we met. I started hearing about this School of Leadership, and became instantly excited about that addition here if we can merge these two schools together. So I'm glad that he is speaking for us today. Dr. Pitcher was born and raised in Indiana. He attended Tennessee Temple University and graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1977. He went on to earn a Master of Science in Organizational Leadership and a Doctor of Philosophy in Global Leadership and Organizational Management from Indiana Tech. He completed additional graduate studies at Indiana University and Western Kentucky University. He taught social sciences at the secondary level for 4 years, and then had a professional career with over 25 years of business management experience. Dr. Pitcher has developed 13 online courses and taught over 300 higher ed courses in business and in leadership. Included in that would be a number of face-to-face courses for undergraduate and Master of Business Administration students, as well as online courses with undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral students. Dr. Pitcher performs consulting work in which he trains leaders, leadership, and business management. It is his life's goal to lead by example. You see that on all of his letters. His passion is to teach and train students to be effective leaders. At Tennessee Temple, he was a member of the President's Council, served as the Dean of the College of Business and Leadership, and director of the PhD program. He was also director of the Center for Leadership Studies at TTU, and of course came to Piedmont in the merger this year. David and his wife Kay have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. This may not gain him a lot of support right here, but he is a loyal Indianapolis Colts fan. Enjoys the lakes and boating. That's a little better. When he has opportunity, his life verses are 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Welcome, Dr. David Pitcher.
Wow, that made me tired just hearing that. Wow, hey. Well, we're glad to be here today, and been here in Winston-Salem for a few months, and we were in Chattanooga for about a year. Before that, we had been up north for many, many years. I think over 20, 25 years. I think as far south as we had lived was Louisville, Kentucky for a short time. So when we moved to Chattanooga, we were beginning to occupy a house, and the first thing that happened, I went up to open the door on the house, and the doorknob fell off in my hand. Somebody tried to break in the house right before we got there, right before we were moving in, and they tried to jimmy the door with a crowbar. The door was mangled. So we began to ask around a little bit. We said, well, what do you do for security? Who do you recommend, and what company, and what kind of security systems do you use? And so somebody sent me a little something that we're going to show here right now, and I don't know if you can read this very well, but they said, this is what we do for security in the South. They said, go to Goodwill and buy a pair of 14 to 16 size men's work boots and place them on your front porch along with a copy of Guns and Ammo magazine. Put 4 giant dog dishes next to the boots and magazines and leave a note on your door that reads this: Bubba. Me and Marcel, Donnie Ray, and Jimmy Earl went for more ammo and beer. Be back in an hour. Don't mess with the pit bulls. They got the mailman this morning and messed him up bad. I don't think Killer took part, but it was hard to tell from all the blood. Anyway, I locked all 4 of them in the house. Better wait outside. Be right back, Cooter. And so this is what the house looked like. And it worked. Now, we haven't been here all that long, so I have to back up a little bit and say that we only know the route to Walmart. So we go there multiple times a week. So if y'all need somebody to make a run for you, we'll do that. So the other thing that worked for our security system is this is myself and Doc. How many of you have met Doc? A few of you have. I think Dr. Pettit lovingly refers to him as the intimidator. But he's very sweet, but he is a pretty good watchdog, and we really haven't had any security issues. Well, I have sort of a leadership kind of hall of fame. People that I look to don't know all of them, haven't even met all of them. But I feel like I know all of them because I have either read their books or listened to them on presentations that they've made. And so I'd like to share some of those. Dr. Clinton Longenecker is a professor at the University of Toledo. He's in his 3rd decade of study on management and leadership. And then James Kouzes of the famed Kouzes and Posner, the Leadership Challenge and the Exemplary Leadership Practices, is definitely in there. Steve Brown, I listened to Steve Brown for many years on the radio as a radio preacher. I don't know if Dr. White's in here. He told me he had a course from Steve Brown at Reformed Seminary. Dave Ramsey, definitely a leader in especially personal financial counseling. Dr. Ken Roush, he is the director of the PhD program from which I graduated at Indiana Tech, and he was the chair of my, there you are, he was the chair of my PhD dissertation committee. Dr. Steve Eccles, I became a friend later in life, and he was actually my boss at Tennessee Temple. He was the president of Tennessee Temple University. He's now the president at Bruton Parker College. Stephen Covey, many of you have probably read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He just passed away within the last year. Definitely belongs in there. Dr. Ken Blanchard, may have read The 1 Minute Manager or studied something about situational leadership with Paul Hershey and Ken Blanchard, so he's in there too. So we try to see kind of what can we take maybe as a whole. What commonalities do these have? I also have put in here a friend that I've made recently, and that's Chris Ronk. And he is a leadership student as well as the CFO, I believe, here at Piedmont, and I think he's more than halfway. Chris isn't here today, but I think he's approaching that PhD in leadership from Concordia. So if we put all these together, what could we maybe take as a group from about maybe characteristics of leaders? I kind of put them all up here, all their pictures together. Let me help you. Let me kind of step over in front of it. Does that help any? Is there anything that you can kind of take from all of these and say, this is what a leader looks like? They all wear dark jackets, right? What in the world is the School of Leadership? A lot of people have probably been scratching their heads and saying, we don't really know that much about this. And so today I want to just kind of treat this as I would maybe like a training. I would probably, in this room, I'd probably tilt everything 90 degrees to the right and sort of fan you out across the room and make it just a discussion, because that's how I teach classes, and I get a lot of feedback from those that are participating and all. So we'll kind of do that like this, except maybe for the feedback part. Why do we study leadership? What is the purpose in this multidisciplinary study? And furthermore, why is it worthy of our attention? Dr. Lee Robertson was well known for the statement, everything rises or falls on leadership, but I think a lot of people have probably said that. And almost everyone recognizes the significance of leadership on outcomes. There are so many passages in the Bible. I just put down a few that we refer to in 1 Timothy, set an example for the believers in speech and conduct, in love, faith, and purity. The leading by example. Romans 12:8, the one who leads should lead with zeal. And definitely we train, leaders have to have more energy. They have to work harder. If you think that you want to be in leadership because then you'll be able to sit back and put your feet up on the desk, better try something else. Leaders are going to work harder. They have to have more energy. They have to have more ideas. They have to really drive the emotional climate of the organization. Passages in Matthew and Mark warn against arrogance and pride, and we definitely incorporate that into leadership. Matthew 23:4 speaks of servant leadership, which is one of the approaches that we look at. People are hungry to learn about leadership today, worldwide. We're starving for exemplary leadership. Leader performance impacts everybody else in the organization. If the leader makes a mistake, all those followers below the leader, wherever that is in the organization, are probably going to pay a consequence for it. So there is a tremendous amount of pressure, if you will, on leaders and making the right decisions. Just to give you an example about the interest in leadership, if you put the word leadership in your search engine, you'll get nearly 500 million returns in less than half a second. People are looking for answers in leadership. Whether it's in the political arena, I think I watched about 2 minutes of a debate earlier this week, and then we've seen a lot of kind of jockeying back and forth about different global and geopolitical events. Businesses are looking for ethical leaders that will make decisions beyond just their own personal desires to put money in their own pockets. Educational leaders, for-profit, not-for-profit, churches, ministries. It is universal, the desire to find good leaders and the interest in leadership. And here's what people tell us. I prepared in a discipline. It may have been accounting or computers or biblical studies or pastoral ministries, whatever that was. And then I got out here eventually into the vocational world, and I'm working in the real world. Let's use the example of a pastor. Here's what they tell me. I found that less than 10% of the time I spent in the pulpit, and 90% or more of the time I spent working with groups and boards and committees and promoting different campaigns. And I really didn't have any training for that. So there's a gap. They said, I need some help in working with people and leading people. Some of the courses that you might find in our programs, and we have both a master's and a PhD. The master's, some of you might be interested in within the next year or two. 36 hours, it's just 12 courses. The PhD is 20 courses, 60 hours. And then you write a dissertation. And those of you that have written one of those know what a pleasure that is. So, but that completes the PhD. We have courses in conflict resolution. What leader hasn't ever had to try to resolve conflicts? Leading organizational change. And we'll look at one or two of these here just to give an introduction and maybe give you an example. Team building. I designed a course in team building one time, and I've enjoyed teaching that many, many times. How we influence the culture as leaders. Communication. Now, the sort of the old style of leadership was that if we're not getting the outcomes that we want, we just tighten up the reins. The beatings will continue until the morale improves. That always works, doesn't it? Maybe we need to look at some leadership strategies. Or that, the most dangerous phrase in the language is we've always done it this way. I call it the what got us here will keep us here philosophy. And that doesn't always work either. So the folks that come to me and say, I want some leadership training, I want to get some ideas about how can I lead groups, because I don't want to happen to me or my organization what has happened to all of these. What got us here will keep us here. Eastman Kodak went out of business earlier this year. We had their cameras for years and years and years. Kmart is certainly not what it used to be. Not that many years ago, who'd heard of Walmart and everybody went to Kmart? Polaroid. Anybody ever take those Polaroid pictures? You click it, you pull it out, and you kind of, do this to it, and you peel it off. Man, that was the most modern thing. That was right up there with the Commodore 64, I think. Where are they today? What got us here will keep us here. Anybody ever go to Borders Books? Can't find them now, can you? And on and on. So whether it's a BlackBerry or an Atari or any of those, the leaders in these organizations fell asleep. They fell asleep at the wheel. And they didn't adapt to not only modern strategies in their business, but in the way they conducted their business, in the way they led their employees and developed products for their customers. It's been said that this is a scenario that's played out often. CFOs are always watching the dollars, right? It's their job. It's important. So the CFO goes to the CEO and says, what happens if we invest in developing these people? We bring in leadership consultants. We focus on that. We have courses in that. What happens if we do all that and then they leave us? And the CEO's response, what happens if we don't do it and they stay? I love this quote because this kind of gives an introduction to sort of our approach to leadership. And Kuznis and Posner said this: leaders inspire a shared vision, and notice the word share, shared, and the leader's job in the inspiration. They gaze across the horizon of time, imagining the attractive opportunities that are in store when they and their constituents arrive at a distant destination. They communicate that shared vision. So let's look a little bit about leaders. There are really only two conditions to being a leader. The first is that you have followers. I tell folks, turn around and look behind you. Anyone there? There's no one there today. If there's no one there, you're not a leader. If no one's following, you're not a leader. So you have to have followers. And then secondly, you have to have influence over those followers. So it's the decisions that you make, the procedures, the processes that you put in place. Somehow you have influence over those followers. You have followers and you have influence over them. You're a leader. You may not be a good one. You may not be an exemplary leader, but you are a leader if you meet those two conditions. Now, sort of a meta-analysis of many studies says that here's what followers are looking for in leaders. Three things. They come up time and time again. I just had this validated with some research that I read about 2 weeks ago from Stanford University. They're looking for these three things out of leaders. First of all, that the leader's competent. Anybody know who that is? By the way, he should be in my Hall of Fame too. Anybody know? Jeff Bezos, founder, chairman, CEO of Amazon. Pretty decent sized company. They're looking for competence in the leader. Now, because I talk to CEOs and principals in all of companies, I always emphasize to them, you don't have to be the best at everything that's out there that has to be done in your business. The CEO of the financial institution does not have to be the best at the teller window. The teller's better at counting money and making change and doing all the things and balancing the drawers and all that. But you do have to be the best at being a CEO. That's what they expect out of you. And then beyond competence, followers are looking for someone who is confident. 1 Corinthians 14:8 says, if the trumpet gives an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself for the battle? When the time comes to lead, the leader has to be out front. You know, it's not like, let's you and him fight. you're leading. You're leading the charge. You're leading the battle. You are leading that movement toward the vision. And so followers expect the leaders to be competent. They expect them to be confident. Get on my back. Here we go. And then finally, followers are looking for leaders who are humble. James 4:6 says, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. It's kind of a paradox. It's not an easy fence to straddle sometimes. But followers have named pride and arrogance as the number one chief complaint against their leaders. 20-year study by Dr. Longenecker. Year after year, time after time, study after study. Number one, arrogance and pride in the leaders. And so, we emphasize to leaders that they be competent, confident, and humble. Leadership is not positional. It's not traits. I find myself even sometimes saying, well, it's the leadership of that organization. And I'm using it sort of as a noun, like a person or a group of people. But it's not positional. It's not traits. Leadership is behavior. It's how we act as leaders. Exemplary leadership is exemplary behavior. And here's the positive for all of us, that can be learned. That can be learned. We can learn it and we can improve upon it. Here's the formula that we use in all of our training and all of our classes, and that is this, that thoughts, or what is our attention, drives our emotions. What we are thinking produces emotions within us. That then leads to behavior, and it yields the outcomes. So we would write that, sorry, I'm kind of a quantitative person, we would write that as outcomes are a function of thoughts, emotion, and behavior. And so in leadership, when we think about emotional intelligence, we are starting at the core. The Bible says, above all else, guard your heart. So we start with that. Another important tenet of our approach is the exemplary leadership practices. And I'll just go through these quickly, and those are the ones that Kouzes and Posner developed. You may have heard a little bit about emotional intelligence and Daniel Goleman. And Goleman studied the superstar performers. Goleman studied the people that were far above their more mediocre peers. Kouzes and Posner said, we want to look at the other end of that coin. We want to study kind of some ordinary leaders who accomplished extraordinary things. And they did this by a series of qualitative studies where they interviewed not only the leaders, but also the followers that were involved in those just enormous, amazing things that happened in their organizations. And here's what they found out. When those tremendous accomplishments took place, these things were characteristic of the leader. This is what was going on in the leader's life. They said the leader modeled the way. Those leaders that were sort of ordinary but accomplished extraordinary things inspired a shared vision. They challenged the process. They enabled others to act. And they encouraged the heart. We could go into a lot of detail. We could spend a few weeks. This was half my dissertation, so we could talk about this for a long time. But that's kind of the approach that we take. I'm going to skip over this one. I'm kind of proud of that because I developed it, so I just wanted you to see it. John is an expert in leadership. Harvard business professor for many, many years, has written more books on than I could ever even read on leadership. Cotter said that here are some mistakes that are made when we think about leadership. First of all, we sort of confuse management and leadership. And he said that mistake number one is that they're used synonymously. Again, this is just an introduction, so we could talk, and we would talk a lot about the difference in management versus leadership. He said mistake number two is, again, leadership is used to refer to people at the top, and maybe under them would be management, and then we'd have the workers. He said mistake number three is thinking of leadership in terms of personality or charisma. Oh, that person, they're a leader because of that. But he said this, from all of his study, he said, when you look at management and leadership, he said, this is what we find, that we are overmanaged. You ever heard the term micromanager? There are times for that. For many years, I had a job where I got put in to the worst place in the company, time and time and time again. And they would say, fix it, we'll see you in 3 or 4 months. And so I had to kind of micromanage there at the beginning. I had to get rid of people that weren't the right ones, move in people that were the right ones, get processes and systems developed and flow charts and all that. And there wasn't any room for debate. I had to be very direct and very authoritative. But what we have learned is that that style of leadership will only bring short-term gains. You can't do that forever. So we're overmanaged, we're under-led, we don't have as much leadership as we do management. And he said there are very few organizations today that have sufficient exemplary leadership. A lot of very well-managed companies, institutions, organizations, but they're not well-led. Leadership is not about attributes or traits. The original, way back, old studies in leadership, they would look at things like they'd say, well, you need to be tall to be a leader. You need to have a deep voice. You need to be handsome or beautiful or this or that or the other to be a leader. I think there's an Old Testament example of that, and it's kind of Saul and David, isn't it? Didn't the people sort of get what they asked for, what they thought the traits were in Saul? Didn't God say, no, I want this little shepherd boy over here? So it's not about traits. It's about behavior. And I wish I could tell you the story about this guy right here, who's the CEO of a very large financial institution. And you see him carrying a box on his back. And that is when I arrived at his location, one of the times that I was training his folks there, he ran out the door, threw open the back of my car, grabbed the box, put it on his shoulder, and said, meet me in here. That's a servant leader. Behavior. We could talk about definitions of leadership. Nordhaus said it's a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. And Burns added to that a reciprocal relationship between leaders and followers is implied. Leading is not all about the person standing up front, sticking out their chest and saying, I am the leader, with a big S for Superman on their chest. It's a reciprocal relationship. Effectively communicated influence involving a reciprocal process between those who aspire to lead and those who choose to follow. Okay, let's look at a couple of these. Just real quickly. Communication. What is your communication style? Should the leader communicate like this? Ever hear of Yogi Berra? Yogi Berra just passed away this year, not that long ago. He was a famous baseball player in his day, catcher for the New York Yankees, but he might have been better known for his yogiisms, his sayings. And he would say things like, it ain't the heat, it's the humility. Baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. You better cut the pizza in 4 because I'm not hungry enough to eat 6. You should always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't come to yours. Nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. Half the lies they tell about me aren't true. I just want to thank everyone who made this day necessary instead of possible. So in communication, we kind of sort of size up the audience or the followers, and we direct our communication approach in that way. Communication's important. Anybody ever been a victim of autocorrect? Now, come on, you have, you know it. You may have had to write an apology email afterwards and say, man, I didn't mean that. Why is communication so important for leaders? Because of the peril of incorrect communication. Misunderstandings can happen. And that's why we lift on 3. Somebody said, this is what happened to me. When I was ready to pay for my purchase of gunpowder and bullets, the cashier said to me, strip down facing me. making a mental note to complain to the NRA about the gun control wackos running amok. I did just as she instructed. When the hysterical shrieking and alarms finally subsided, I found out she was referring to how I should place my credit card in the card reader. I've been asked to shop elsewhere in the future. They need to make their instructions a little clearer. Why is it so important? Because we can miscommunicate. When I said nuke the Chinese, I meant put the takeout in the microwave. This is even more important when we aren't face-to-face, when we're sending an email or shooting somebody a text. And then unresponsiveness. You ever send an email or a text and you don't get a response? We're such an immediate, demanding culture, aren't we? I mean, if we haven't gotten an answer back in 5 minutes, and I'm guilty of this too, like, I wonder what's wrong. I wonder if they're mad at me. Man alive, it was 5 minutes, or a half hour. Goodness knows if it was till the next day, Well, Tony Alessandra has developed what he calls the platinum rule. And we're familiar with the golden rule. But Tony Alessandra says we should do unto others as they would have them do unto them. Because maybe as you would have it done unto you isn't the way I would. And we think about that in communication. The way you want to be communicated with isn't necessarily the way I want to be communicated with. So we have to assess who is our audience and who are our followers and adjust our communication style according to that. This little guy said old people at weddings always poke me and say, "You're next." I started doing the same thing to them at funerals. Love this one. Heafy and Losada did a study, and it's published in Harvard Business Review in 2013. They found that the ideal praise to criticism ratio is 5.6 to 1, almost 6 to 1. In essence, what they said was, we earn the right as leaders to criticize or to say something that is of a corrective nature to our followers. Well, I don't know if I believe that or not. Well, here's what their metrics were that they measured against. Financial performance of the team, group, or organization, customer satisfaction, and 360-degree feedback of team members. Looks like it worked. Looks like those are some pretty important metrics. They also did a study. Gottman did one of married couples. He was looking for marriages that endured versus those that ended early. Same thing. It was something like 3 compliments to 4 criticisms in those. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they will never forget how you feel. We look at change management. I'm going to move through these quickly. And there are many reasons that change efforts fail, and they are largely attributed, as Cotter said, to a lack of leadership. A couple of these we're going to move through. The Achilles heel, Cotter said, of leaders can be found when they believe they know it all, that they're in charge, that the rules don't apply to them, they'll never fail, they did it all by themselves, they're better than the little people, they are the organization, and they can focus everything on the job and not on the people. We learn real quickly in leadership that our outcomes are based on what others do and not always on what we do. We will talk a lot about emotional intelligence in this program and about managing our emotions effectively as we interact with others. And that's another really, really positive thing that would be in this program. Let me tell you quickly about the Pygmalion effect. We'll look at a video and we'll be done. The Pygmalion effect has its roots in educational study, and some researchers decided to do this. They wanted to see if the expectations of the teacher were lived out in the students. So they did it actually in elementary school, and they measured teachers' expectation versus student output or outcomes. They found out that it was exactly as the teachers had expected. So those researchers did something really sneaky. They decided to mix things up. They gave the information to the teacher at the beginning of the course that said, here are your top students, here are your bottom students. Here's what they performed. But see, they mixed it up. Guess how they performed? At the end of the experimental period, they measured it. The ones that the teachers were told would finish at the top finished at the top. The ones that they were told would finish at the bottom finished at the bottom. Only problem was that really wasn't the way they had been coming into it. They'd switched it up. And so we find that high expectations are the key. One of the strongest, it's about the second strongest correlation in outcomes is what the leader believed of the followers. There are 4 examples of this that we could go through, and I'm going to skip over those today. 4 words that change everything, though, are I believe in you. As leaders, we have to demonstrate trust in our followers. It can be dangerous. It can be scary. It's like, standing on the edge of the diving board on one foot and trying to balance. But we have to do it as leaders. Let's look at this video. I'm going to wrap up with this on transformational leadership. We have several different styles that we look at. One of those is transformational leadership, and that is where the leader inspires the followers in order that they might transcend to higher expectations. So if we can see that now.
Good morning. How you doing this morning?
Here at Port Berry Elementary in Port Berry, Louisiana, we found the most contagious smile in Cajun country. It belongs to elementary school principal Gabe Saunier, and it comes so naturally. It's like his face has no other option.
Can you even make a frown?
That's your frown. That's the one you're gonna get.
You're just gonna keep. I love it.
The smile just wants to break out. That's just me. That's just me. It was hard, but that's just me.
The guy clearly loves his job.
I started in November.
He's new to the principal position, but he's been working at the same school for more than 30 years. In fact, Mr. Saunier began his career in education just down the hall.
Well, we really got y'all started.
This was your office?
This is our office right here.
Office in the most liberal sense of the word.
This is a mop room.
This is a mop room.
Mr. Saunier's incredible journey from janitor to principal began in 1985, when then Principal Wesley Jones pulled him aside one day.
He said, I'd rather see you grading papers than pick them up.
No one had ever believed in him that much.
I took it to heart.
So, at the age of 39, whenever he wasn't cleaning classrooms, he was studying in them. Got his teaching degree, and shortly after, his first teaching job. Then came the masters.
Isn't that something?
It is something. Yeah. And yet, despite all the degrees and the new job, Gabe Saunier hasn't forgotten where he came from. Believe it or not, he still cleans his own office. Obviously, you can take the janitor out of the mop room, but you can't take the work ethic out of the janitor. And there's a lesson in there for boys and girls and grown-ups everywhere.
Very good. Don't let your situation that you're in now define what you're going to become later. I always tell them it's not where you start, it's how you finish.
And Mr. Saunier isn't finished yet. Before we left, he confessed that he wouldn't mind being superintendent someday.
I think I'd welcome it.
Does the superintendent know this?
Yeah. Probably not, yeah.
Our road to success can sometimes be messy. And if we have transformational leaders along the way that help inspire us to transcend our previous goals, then we're so much better off. That's what we want our leaders to do. The last thing I want to give you is a quote that we must always remember as leaders and as influencers. And Kouzes and Posner said this. They said, leadership is a relationship between those who aspire to lead and those who choose to follow. Loyalty cannot be commanded or demanded. It's something the people, the constituency, choose to grant to those who have earned it. In the end, leaders don't decide who leads, followers do. Thank you for your kind attention.